restraint systems to cut down on the need to transfer folks from a wheelchair to a seat. Can you elaborate at all on how an in-cabin wheelchair restraint would change the flying experience with passengers with disabilities?
I can give you several. Mr. Larsen, I've been both a witness and experienced it personally. A couple years ago, I'd fallen and hurt my hip. And the one scary thing that these individuals face is that the aisle chair when you go down the back of an aircraft. I had hurt my hip, and I was scared that the people weren't trained to properly lift me into that seat, so I chose to do it myself the best I could. The individuals that were taking me back weren't paying attention. They banged my leg on every aisle chair about 15 rows back. And the pain was so intense. But I had an event that I promised I would come to DC for, and so I delivered on that promise. Ernie Butler also experienced similar situations, and he would, instead of being on an aisle chair, grab the back of chairs, he'd get his wheelchair as close as he could into the cabin, grab the back of the seats, kind of bunny hop himself to wherever he needed to be for fear that they would injure him like they did in the past. He did this probably 40 times before his passing, but it was everybody here to my left has those stories and experienced that situation, and the fear of getting on an aisle chair is immense to all of us.
In your written testimony, I believe in yours, you recount the number of wheelchair damage reports. Was that in your written statement?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number, but it's in the thousands.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to highlight that for the committee.
Actually, tens of thousands to be more specific.
Okay. If I keep talking, it might be 100,000. Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Walden, was just during your testimony, I was talking to the staff a little bit about the integration pilot program and the fact that we gave direction to FAA to run that for 2 years. Do you have any thoughts about whether or not it needs to be extended beyond the 2-year legal limit?
Thank you for the question. In my opening remarks, I mentioned that success has been uneven. We've had reports. There are some participants that have beyond visual on-a-site authority that are engaged in package delivery and only one for compensation or hire. Other test sites are, other IPP participants have not been that active, and it's been taking a long time to get waivers. So we would recommend not only that the program be extended, but be broadened. I think when the Secretary announced the initial selection, it was the idea that others would be selected at a later time. There are a number of applicants that were very well qualified. With regard to most of the IP programs, they were de-scoped at the start, so that if an IPP said, well, we're selected, we've got 15 projects, then the FAA says, well, we'll go with 3 right now. And that left a lot of good work not done. So it needs to have more FAA resources. It needs to be extended. It needs to be broadened.
Ms. Nelson, you testified that 3 airlines now have, your members have negotiated in the agreements a 10-hour rest rule, and Delta's made an announcement as well. Any concerns that not so much that the market's getting ahead of the FAA, but that the FAA is behind the market, and in that will the FAA be able to develop a 10-hour rest rule that conforms to what your members in the airlines are actually negotiating?
What we have negotiated is language that mirrors what was written in the law. So it is the exact same. There's no conflict there at all. Mm-hmm. And I should also note that Horizon Air has agreed to implement this outside of contract negotiations as well. Mm-hmm. But that there is a big difference between having negotiated contract language and having a regulation that the airlines must follow and must follow through with and expect that there will be enforcement from the FAA. there are many more higher penalties for violating that as opposed to committing a contract violation. So we have been able to determine that there is not a cost factor of note to this, that the implementation can take place in a matter of weeks, actually, is what we have been experiencing, and that all that the FAA needs to do, based on all of the data that we already have from the 7 commissioned fatigue studies and from the data that we have compiled here, is simply follow the direction of Congress to update the rule and force the airlines to implement the rest.
Thank you. Recognize Mr. Fitzpatrick for 5 minutes.